Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures, and it's Friday, which means I'm bringing you another obscurity in literature. And this is a book that I've probably mentioned quite a few times on this channel before, because I absolutely totally dug it. And then, for some bizarre reason, I went and I sold it. So I had the big, fat, and I mean fat, because this is almost clocking in at 500 pages. It's a big, fat book. And that is the complete Luther Strode. So Luther Strode originally was a set of 3 different miniseries by Justin Jordan Tradmore and Felipe Sobrero. And for whatever reason, this is like one of those books that I just picked up on a whim at the comic shop on one of those rare occasions when I had a comic shop nearby that I actually could attend to somewhat regularly and pick something up off the shelf when there was things worth picking up. And so I actually had the first issue of Luther Strode, and I went ahead and ended up buying the whole miniseries, and then eventually all 3 of the paperbacks, and then the hardcover. And, you know, I'm one of those kind of people that likes to trade up and trim down my collection, and I will be honest, this book was one that after I'd read it, I went, damn, do I really want to get rid of this? And I kept thinking at the time even, yeah, you know, it's just, I want to say that the hardcover was even larger. It was like one of those oversized ones. I could be wrong, but I feel like it was. Maybe that's just my imagination and how much I loved it. But, be that as it may, I ended up selling it, trading it, I don't remember what. And naturally, I regretted it instantly. So, yeah. When I saw, though, that Image was going back and putting it in paperback, I was like, well, shoot. Sign me up. We're down for what? This is probably round 3 or 4 of the Luther Strode story. And I got to say, I absolutely love it. Now, you'll notice right away on the cover that we have a lot of, well, the 3 dominant colors of the series. I guess 4 if you want to count gray. But there's lots of blacks, lots of reds, and lots of shades of gray. And one of the things that I absolutely love is how Tradmore's art just evolves as the story takes its pace. What you start off with in the very first miniseries, The Strange Town of Luther Strode, and I don't want to destroy the binding because I'm sure I'm going to be reading through this many times over again. It starts off, well, that's not how it started off. That was the cover. I was like, why is this dude covered in blood? Why does he look like that weird mask? And so right away from the very get-go, it is absolutely going to be intense. And one of the things I found really interesting was, despite the copious amount of blood, gore, and gratuitous language, not a single bit of nudity. Well, okay, maybe there was some here and there, but it wasn't like anything. No over-sexualization of the women in this story by any means. And there are some quite competent and capable ladies in this story. But the story really, and in here we could get some of the nice gore going on as the story starts. You have the dweeby nerdy guy. That is Luther. And he, where is it? Gets, oh, we're already too far where he gets that. Reads a comic book. Gets one of those ads in the back, you know, the Herculean method, finds it in the back of the comic book with his massive muscles and decides he's going to try it out for himself, and it's going to turn him into the Charles Atlas-like characters that we saw throughout the back covers and interior ads of the comics of yesteryear. But yeah, this book is chock full of gratuitous, and I mean overtly gratuitous violence, to the point where the violence and gore almost takes on a really pristine beauty, because they really are doing things with it. You have Luther as he becomes a more and more capable man among men as the story continues, and I really don't want to give away too much, but as he becomes a bit of a vigilante Batman type figure and starts to do his thing on the criminal underworld, but then ends up uncovering the secret history of the book that gave him such impressive physical prowess. And needless to say, as is always the case in these types of stories, bad things happen, and yes, he is getting choked by his own intestines as his neck is snapped, but that's just a walk in the park for some of these guys. I'm like, yeah, that's Luther. That's what Luther looks like as the story continues. And it just keeps going as he starts to wage a single-handed war against the underworld and starts getting into trouble with even more and more nefarious people, as well as we start to learn more about the underlying big bads of the story. And just the artwork is crazy intense. And having looked at this, I'm like, damn, maybe I should go spring for the hardcover again. If it is an oversized one, I'm going to have to double check. But Luther himself, especially as the story goes, becomes more and more of a hulking monster. And what's funny is Trode's artwork, I think early on, really kind of has a more angular style. But then as we get later into the book, and I swear I just want to give him like some manga type pacing. We have lots and lots of these just like panel by panel fight scenes going on where just the shapes of the bodies as they start to become more and more exaggerated. And if you guys have seen like his Silver Surfer Black, I even put a review of it ages ago if you want to take a look at that. The way he starts to exaggerate the anatomy of his characters is just really quite impressive. And as the story goes, I'm only like 200 pages into it, and there's all sorts of dudes getting wiped out, melted, burned. That ain't gonna stop any of these dudes. The bad guys in this truly are bad. And it does start to veer a little bit off into supernatural territory, not too much. But again, we have lots of these just very cinematic action set pieces, which is funny because later on we actually have some takeoffs. And I think, to me, once you start to get into the final miniseries, The Legacy of Luther Strode, and where some of the big bads start to really enter the field, you start to see the really crazy, exaggerated action sequences that I really dig about Trad's artwork. Just the sense of movement, and yeah, that's blood that was all over them there. I'm jumping way ahead, but that's okay. I don't want to spoil too much. I'm trying to get away from some of the other characters. We don't want to see where they start. I don't want to spoil the big bad guy either. Where do those guys first show up? He fights the brother-sister pair. I've got like piles of miniatures around me. Somebody should make a Luther Strode mini. We get way more exotic baddies as the series progresses in a very anime sense. I don't want to tell you too much about the bad guy at the end. But in the back, and I'm really, honestly and truly, the end sequences are my absolute favorite, but I don't want to spoil them because there's some really big major spoilers for the series. And if you've listened to me long enough, I don't like spoiling stuff. There's one panel in particular, towards the last 2 or 3 issues especially, you start to see some of the early kind of crazy, trippy stuff that we would see with like his Silver Surfer Black and Ghost Rider and some of his other art. Where is it? There's a really cool one where he's like, maybe it was when he was fighting with the Russian dude. I guess there was some full-on male nudity there. Hey. Give you a good look, huh? Oh, we didn't talk about the cowboy dude, but we're not going to, because he's kind of integral to the story. Okay, cowboy dude was after Russia, if I remember correctly. I'm just mumbling to myself. My apologies. Yeah, this page in particular is the one I always remember seeing when I saw this page the first time, and just the way that the panels themselves are getting all trippy. I love it. And again, this is something that we started to see more of with his later work, but I think this is probably around the first issue where he really starts to really mess with the boundaries. 300 something pages in. This is like issue 14. So yeah, like the last 4 issues, because it was an 18-issue maxi series, I guess. But yeah, in the back we got all the fun stuff. Tired of being kicked around and all that. I want to say most of these were probably in the hardcover as well, with the brains being sliced out, phones being jammed through eyes, the 36th Chamber of Shaolin ripoff, Lawrence of Arabia, some Bruce Willis movie. I don't know, that doesn't look familiar, does it? The Jim Cotta style poster. You can start to really see Trad's art here it's more of the loopy, wavy angularness, whereas at the beginning of the book it's really kind of stiff, rectangular, geometric. And even here in these examples you can see some of that. Dude getting torn in half. But damn, do I love this dude's sketch work, especially the later stuff. Really, really cool looking. Look like Red Ribbon members. Dude is an absolutely talented artist. Messiah like Luther. Hell, I almost kind of want to see them do a sequel to it and see what happens. But yeah. Then in the back we have a bunch of fun little back and forth between the author and the artist, and then we have a breakdown of the panels and how that all works out. Always neat to see. And then a few pages of various violent, gratuitous pinups, all under a nice, very cool looking cover. So if you dig action comics, if you dig violent comics, I don't think you can really go wrong with this. And I mean, just if you like dynamic art, there's no denying. Stuff on display in here is super dynamic. I mean, when I first saw it, I remember really taking note of it, and just that's one of those artists that I always like to kind of follow and see what they're doing and notice what's new with their career, because definitely he's got a style that's definitely going places. So yeah, I'll put a link down below for Amazon if you guys are curious. We'll have that little link down there. And otherwise, hopefully this is something that is up your alley as much as mine. With that said, though, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.